So thank you for coming. This is your third, I think.
I think so.
Yeah? So you've sort of grown up in the Web 2 stage, I would say. I didn't mean that the way it sounded. So sorry. But yesterday you had a very big announcement, or perhaps just yet another announcement in what has been a series of a lot of big announcements recently, almost all of them having to do with the themes that we've been talking about here. This one was messaging. So many folks have said this is a Gmail killer. And when we asked Carol Bartz to say one word after I said Facebook, she said competitor. And I think that's because of mail. I'm not sure that it was because of Facebook finance. Give us your encapsulated view of what Messages is about and how it differentiates, because I think people might be a bit confused by the framework of mail.
Sure. So, I mean, we went into this looking not to build an email product, right? But thinking about, what would be a modern messaging system if we rethought this from scratch? And, one of the interesting things, I started off the conference yesterday, or a little press conference, giving this story of, a couple of Thanksgivings ago, I was hanging out with my girlfriend's family, and my girlfriend has this sister who's in high school. So whenever I get a chance to talk to high school kids, I always want to ask them what type of stuff they're using, right? Because I think I'm kind of young, but when you talk to high schoolers, you feel old immediately, right?
Yeah, I know.
So I was asking them, what kind of stuff are you using, right? Do you use email? Do you use these different social networks? Do you use different iPhone apps? And so when we got to email, I was like, all right, well, what do you use? And they're like, well, some of us use Gmail, probably most of us use Gmail. A bunch of us use Yahoo, but we don't really use it that much. I was like, well, why? I thought everyone uses email. And they go, well, it's too slow. Like, what do you mean it's too slow? Email's instantaneous. You send an email and it gets delivered. And what they meant was that it was too formal, right? The types of communication that a lot of people are doing these days, things like SMS and IM are just a lot simpler, right? I mean, you don't have to remember an address. You pick out someone's name that you want to send something to, you send it to them. You don't have to think of a subject line. You don't need to say, hey, mom, at the beginning. You don't need to say, love, Mark, at the end. It doesn't need to, there's no paragraphs, or you don't need to keep track of different threads or anything like that. It's just really simple. And I think that messaging in the future is going to resemble that a lot more because it's a lot more natural. We have one thread, right, a conversation between us. We don't have 20 different conversations. So mapping it out like that, we think makes a lot more sense. So when we kind of got started thinking about how to build a Messages product, we didn't come at it from the perspective of, let's add email functionality. We came at it from the perspective of, let's take away everything that we can, right? So we got rid of subject lines. We got rid of the divide between IM and Messages on Facebook. So those are now the same thing, and we made it so now it's interoperable with email as well and SMS. So now you kind of have one system where you can just send people simple messages and they can get delivered to people wherever they are. If they're on Facebook, it'll pop up as an IM. If they're not, then they can come back and it can get delivered to their inbox. If they have their phone and they have the iPhone app, that can get sent as a push notification. If they don't, it can get sent as an SMS. If they want, it can get sent as an email. Seamless. So that's what we're doing.
It sounds though that people are in your friend graph. And so, of course, one of the advantages of email is there's a namespace that you can discover and you can communicate with people who you're not connected with. So how do you think about that in the context of...
So one of the things that is very good to solve with the social graph is spam, right? Mm-hmm. It's been a classic email problem. Email filters over the past 10 or 15 years have gotten very good at filtering out the real junk, right? So you don't get a lot of Viagra email anymore. But you do get a lot of random emails from services that you subscribe to, different things that you connect to that you may not be that interested in hearing from. And one thing that email can't do is differentiate between two real people who are both real people sending you legitimate emails, but it can't differentiate between which one you like more, right?
Gmail's starting to do a good job of that with priority inbox.
Yeah, no, and that stuff is pretty cool.
Gmail
right?
would
it
be better
does
if
factor
use
in.
Facebook Connect, don't you think?
Absolutely.
But I mean, I think for a long time, people have agreed that the real way to solve spam and filtering is you should have a list of the people that you want to hear from, right? And we could just do that so easily for people because they have their friends list, their friends have their friends list, so we can tell not only who are the people that you communicate with, but who are the people in your network who are likely to be sending you something that's interesting.
There's a fair amount of manual curation there that gets old pretty fast if you're in contact with a lot of people. Do you see automation of that in your future? In the way that Google is, even though they don't always deliver on the promise, they're trying to get algorithmic about figuring out who you really want to communicate with.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the products that we build have the property that you create social dynamics where people explicitly want to share things with other people, and that ends up being a better way to filter things than you can get through an algorithm, right? I think, some of the examples of products that we've launched or worked on recently are good examples of this. So, Photos goes back a while. Groups is pretty recent. But they both have this property, right? If you had asked people, 10 years ago, what would be the best way to take a big set of photos and identify the people in them, most people would have said you should probably have a face recognition algorithm or something like that and kind of crunch all the photos. But it turns out that it's just a lot easier to let people tag their photos of their friends and create a good interface where you have your friends list there and you could do that. It works really well. And the same thing with groups, right? People have come up with interfaces to try to sort people into groups automatically. What we found, groups has been one of our fastest growing products ever. And what we found is that it works really well when you can put your friends into a group, right? One person does manual work and they do the work for the network, right? So, you get 5 or 10% of users putting all their friends into groups, and now everyone can use these products for effective small group communication. It's really cool.
Some people don't like being put into groups.
Well, they can leave those groups.
But they don't like being put in the first place. And then they get a bunch of mail.
It's a kind of spam, different kind of spam.
It's just an interesting... There's a sort of, to pull back a bit, there's something about Facebook which, and I think you'd acknowledge this, which is that it sort of doesn't ask for permission, it asks for forgiveness. That seems to be a Facebook sort of trait, that it's sort of like, well, we'll just keep pushing that envelope until, oops, okay, sorry, we hear you, and then you listen and you pull back. And that happened with the user ID and Rapleaf incident. And it happened with groups too. It's like all of a sudden I was put in all these groups, I started getting all this mail, I'm like, oh, and then I had to go change my permissions and say, no, don't send this stuff, and so on and so forth. Is that an intentional point of view, or is it sort of, and I'm not against that. As a matter of fact, there's many cases when, I've said to boards that I've had to face, sorry, right? Is that the point, I didn't ask for permission, I asked, I'm now asking for forgiveness. So is that does that resonate with you?
Well, our view is that the friend relationship is meaningful, right? And that's the whole point of having a bi-directional relationship instead of a one-way follow model, right? It's a confirmed thing, right? We're friends. In this graph, what that means is that you now have the right to do certain things. You can post on my page.
Right.
You can tag me in photos.
Right.
Now, filtering in my inbox is sorted on that too, because now any of your friends can send a message that goes to my inbox. So that's really how we look at it.
But
right?
you don't have a right to export my data.
What's up?
You don't have a right to export my data. You've made that very clear in this with Gmail.
Yeah, the view there is that everyone owns their own information and has the ability to export it, right? So if you upload photos, you can export that and take it anywhere you want through Connect, and we've made that really easy. And if you want, you can just download all that in a zip file. Now, I think email is a little bit different from social networks in this way. And in an email program, if you have an address book, you've put all the addresses in there. So those addresses are very much your information, right? And downloading that, I think, is a no-brainer. In a social network, your friend list, I think, is your information, right? It's like your set of connections. But if you have an email attached to your account, that's yours. Now, I think it's gray, though, right? When we think about this, there's information that's clearly yours, right? Like if you upload a photo album or write a blog post, that's yours, right? There's information that's clearly not yours, right? If it's someone else's photo album.
Right.
And then there's information that maybe is somewhere in the middle. And I think maybe a photo that you took that I'm tagged in maybe is somewhere in the middle. It's like, what is my rights, or what are my rights for what I should be able to do with that? What should I be able to do with your email address if we're friends and I can see your email address? And I think that those are kind of unsolved problems, and I think we need to sort through that. So I'm not sure we're 100% right on this, but I do think it's not quite that simple, and we're trying to think through these things and be respectful of all the forces that are at play. Right? Because one thing that we do hear a lot, our value system errs very strongly on the side of openness and portability, and that's what we've built Connect, which as far as I can tell, is the single largest system that allows people to bring their data from one system to another that's ever been created. But what we hear most of the time, there's a community here that I think is very invested in that stuff, and we feel pretty aligned with that because we think that in a lot of ways that's the future. That's what's enabling a lot of the new applications and great stuff to get built. But the feedback that we get on a day-to-day basis from hundreds of millions of people is more along the lines of, we want control of all the information that we put into the site. I want to make sure that if I upload a photo album, that stays with exactly the set of people that I said could see it. And just mediating that tension, I think, is a challenging thing.
So why not an option to say, okay, I'm okay with this information to be downloaded? I mean, it seems to me that however you get an email address, you have the option manually to transfer it from one place to another. If it's visible to you, then effectively you have it. It seems a bit of sophistry to say, oh, well, that's really private information and you can't own it. I mean, and if you can suck it in from Google, it certainly seems that it ought to be symmetrical, that they ought to be able to get it out.
I think what you're saying is definitely true. And just as a design principle, what we've said, take photos for an example. Yeah. If you set a photo to be visible to friends only, and we're friends and I see that, and I go to share it with someone else who's not my friend, technically, I can download it and send it and email it to my friend, but if you try to send it to them through Facebook, we give you an error message, right? And that's just, we're trying to give user control. This is an example where these two things are somewhat at odds and at tension. I just think the correct answer isn't completely obvious. Now, I'm not sure that we're completely right, but it's not, I think, a completely black and white thing.
This is the thing that I find fascinating both about Facebook and where we are as a culture, is that we could talk for 2 hours on this stage about this and probably maybe make a little progress in understanding a conversation that is ongoing in our culture that has not finished, as you point out. On the other hand, we have now, the Congress sort of interested, not just in this question, but very specifically in your company. How do you handle, a headline such as Facebook response prompts strong words from privacy lawmakers? There's a new Congress, and the chair of the Energy and Commerce Committee, Joe Barton, incoming, said, in the next Congress, we and our subcommittees are going to put internet privacy policies in the crosshairs. Can you go to them and say, look, we're figuring it out, leave us alone for now?
No, but this is what I was saying. I think right now, a lot more of the feedback that we get is on the side of users need complete control of making sure that anything that they put on the site will only go to the people who they say it will go to, right? And my guess would be that over the next few years, I don't know how long this will take to play out, the data portability and openness side of this it'll become a lot more obvious why that's valuable and the types of great experiences that can be created through that. But I think right now a lot more people are just on the side of asking for user control. And I don't know, you just said we can be up here for 2 hours and have this discussion. These are some of the intellectual debates that we have inside the company every day. And frankly, it's one of the reasons why being at Facebook now is so exciting, right? I think we are kind of at the forefront of some of these issues, which are really unsolved issues in the industry. And I don't know, trying to come up with solutions and propose them is a really interesting problem and an exciting thing to be doing.
I have to say, I do think, despite the fact that it's a very tough position to be in with, for example, Congress, the approach you're taking is right. We got to figure out, go push the boundaries and figure out where they are, because if we set rules too early, we won't figure it out. We just won't. We're going to stay in the past. So,
I want to ask you about a couple of questions of competition. It strikes me, and we talked about this the last time you were here on this stage, that you're really you're in a very interesting phase. You're in what some may call the pre-IPO stage. I won't even bother asking you when that's happening because you'll your eyes will
You'll have to
blaze.
go
Well, a
quiet
couple
on
years
me,
ago, you asked me when
I asked
we
you
were
a
going to do
couple
the
years ago, and you're like, it will be a couple years from now. It's like, God, it's so far away, a couple years from now. So I'm waiting for that S1 to drop. But I know
Don't
it's
hold
not-
your breath.
Yes, don't hold your breath, exactly. But I, there is something that I wonder, with Open Graph and Facebook Connect on so many, and likes and everything just spreading out across the web, it strikes me you're ready to distribute Facebook's business model off domain, and do a friend or a social graph driven ad network, not unlike what Google did about this time in its history, 6 years in, which was AdSense. Do you think that's a reasonably good idea?
Well, I think it's earlier stage than Google was when they did that. So I have no idea when or if it'll make sense to do something like that. I mean, we spent a lot of time building up our ad system and making
You have a very, very good, as I understand it, and a very profitable ad system that's starting to scale to the billions in revenue just for your domain.
We're doing okay.
I've heard.
You know,
But the web's much bigger. There's a whole other web out there that's waiting for...
And you've been very successful with non-monetized Facebook reaching out onto the web.
Right, so you've got sort of you're in. You just need to light that
The
bad boy
wiring
up.
is there. The wiring is
So-
there.
I mean, yeah, we're getting started with ads, and I think that's ramping up well. And one of the
figures
more
isn't just
important.
getting started.
Well, I think
Nine
it is.
figures is you've
And
landed and taken over a lot of
I
territory.
think we have a lot left to do. And same on the credit side, right, where that one is really just getting started. And here's the way that I look at it, right? Rather than kind of pushing out any of these systems aggressively or anything like that, I think that over the next 5 years, most industries are going to get rethought to be social and designed around people. Right? I mean, this is kind of the evolution that we've seen at Facebook, right? I mean, we started, just built the first Facebook directory product when I was in college, and the whole theory was, there were all these products out there. If you wanted music, you can use Kazaa back then, right, or iTunes. If you wanted reference material, you could use Wikipedia. If you wanted to search the web, you could use Google. If you wanted to look up anything to buy, you could use Amazon. There was no people service. And this struck us as really weird because people are humans are hardwired to be very interested in people, just psychologically. It's deeply wired into our brains. So we built this directory people service, and it immediately became the most engaging product that was on the web. Right? And it didn't have the biggest user base immediately, but it had the most usage per user from the beginning. And
What are those numbers today? I mean, what's your...
I mean, and one of the things that's crazy is we still have more than 50% of people who are on Facebook using it every day. So yeah, more than 500 million people, more than 50% every day. And now it's growing because of all the mobile stuff. But so then a few years in, a couple of engineers at the company kind of branched off and said, okay, we're going to build different products, right? And we got photos, and we got the first version of groups and events, and at this phase, all these projects kind of had the same thing in common. They were groups of 2 or 3 people competing against whole startups that were out there, right? I mean, Flickr was a photo sharing startup, and that's all that they did, right? And there were group companies and event companies, and we had these teams of 2 or 3 people, and they were building, usually over a period of just a couple of months, very simple versions of these products, right? I mean, our initial photo product didn't have high-resolution photos. It didn't have printing. You couldn't even reorder the photos in an album. But the thing that it had was it was very deeply socially integrated, right? I mean, you uploaded a photo, and it went to all your friends immediately, and they could all see it, and they could interact with you around it. And it turned out that social feature was more important than every other feature put together. And very quickly, our Photos product became the most used Photos product on the web. Same thing with groups, same thing with events. Over the last 5 years, we've kind of filled in a lot of those products to make them more fully featured because we think you should have high quality and good social products. But the bottom line that we found was that you make something social, and that kind of rethinks the whole space. Right? A social version of anything can almost always be much more engaging and outperform a non-social version. So 2007, we pivoted and said, okay, instead of building all these little things ourselves, let's build a platform so that other people can build these. And since then, we've seen a lot of really interesting innovation. And,
but you are also building them yourself. I mean, Facebook
we're building some ourselves.
Good example.
We're building some ourselves, but a lot of them we're not going to build ourselves, right? And especially around content, right? So, I mean, the games part of the platform has been really interesting. And Fred was just talking about this when he was up here before. And there have been 4 really good game companies that have been built almost entirely on top of Facebook, right? I mean, Zynga, Playfish, Playdom, and Crowdstar are really meaningful companies. I mean, Playdom was just bought for $750 million. Playfish was bought for almost $500 million. Zynga, obviously independent and worth multiple billions of dollars. But the way that we look at this is that that's really disruptive, right? I mean, Zynga's market cap, I think, at this point is greater than EA's, right? And that's like structural disruption in an industry because they went at it and built social games that are just much more engaging on a per-user basis.
By the way, what you just said contradicts Fred Wilson's point that Zynga's the only successful company built on the Facebook platform. You just named 4.
Well, the way that we look at it is if you look at a lot of platforms, I do agree that games have been the first big vertical to tip, right? And that have gotten rethought to be completely social. But I think that's actually true on most platforms, right? On an iPhone and an iPad, games were some of the first major things that took off. Even if you go back to the early PC, some of the first things that got people to bring PCs into their home were games.
So what do you think the next things are?
It's really tough to predict because I think a lot of it comes down to excellent entrepreneurs with vision, right? And I mean, it really isn't like, it's not obvious, right, how you don't just like plug social stuff in and it works.
Well, these excellent entrepreneurs in the audience would like to know the ones you're going to do so they can steer clear of them.
I think, anything that, I think it's actually pretty clear the type of stuff that we're going to do and not, right? I mean, we do things that involve people sharing information with other people. Anything that involves...
That's pretty broad.
No, but anything that involves content or specific expertise in an area, so games is I think, a really deep area. Music, movies, TV, news, like
yeah,
any
you're gonna want to stay
thing,
away from those
e-commerce,
movies.
like any of this stuff. Like, it's, Oh, now I get that. Wasn't sure where you're going with that.
I had to get it in somewhere,
Whatever, it's all good. I think that over the next 5 years, those verticals are all going to be completely rethought, and there are going to be some really good businesses built. And some of them will be incumbents that incorporate social functionality, and some of them will be new startups thinking it from scratch.
Talking about music makes me
so
think...
I didn't actually get back to your ads thing at the end, but the 2-sentence link at the end there was our view is that we should play a role in helping to reform and rethink all of those industries, and we'll get value proportional to what we put in, right? So in gaming, we get some percentage of the value of those companies, largely through their transactions, through buying ads and credits right now, but that's all because we're helping them, right? And if we're helpful to other industries in building out what would be a good solution for e-commerce or anything like that, then I think that there will be some way that we'll get value from that. But I don't think about exporting an ad system or anything like that anytime soon.
But there's sort of a segue here, whether it's advertising or not. There's 2 models for you to exploit your platform, and one is demonstrated by someone like Zynga. They're on Facebook. The other is you're exporting your social knowledge, your social graph out to other sites. Even if it's not advertising, you could, for example, imagine Facebook as an engine for social commerce that's available to many, many startups off Facebook. Or you can say, no, what we're really going to do is we're going to build social selling into Facebook. You can imagine, Facebook Places, well, it's built into Facebook versus you could have been an enabler for many, many location-based startups. How do you decide on the inbound platform versus the outbound platform aspect of what you do? Because social enabling other people is a really, really powerful capability that you have.
Yeah, so I guess we think it's going to happen in all these places. But earlier on, even 6 months ago, I kind of thought of this distinction between there's Canvas inside of Facebook and there's Connect if you want to build outside of Facebook. But recently our thinking has come around to, actually they're just kind of different things, and in a lot of ways it makes sense for people to do both. In addition to a mobile app and mobile web app and like lots of different types of apps, right? I mean, one of the things that I think is...
But if somebody wanted to make a social music app, you could say we're going to have social music on Facebook, or you could say we're going to help Google who's not your best friend, compete with Apple, because Apple has a pretty good music product. They're trying to make it social. But hey, if anybody, for that matter, who wanted to have a better music product could partner with you if you were in the partnering mood, or you could say, no, we're going to build our own music product. I mean, so which is it?
Oh, I mean, our default is just build an open platform, right? I mean, the stuff that we work on, like groups, location, messages, are like really core parts and either distribution channels or what we view are kind of foundational building blocks of the social graph, right?
Okay. That's a really pretty clear distinction to make.
Right, that's how we think about it, right? I mean, anything that doesn't have to be built by us, we would rather not be built by us. But anything that, just because we're a pretty small company, and we have like a few hundred engineers, right? But like, I mean, I think it's small.
Yeah.
It's growing.
But in general, the point is that you see a fairly robust partnering strategy for Facebook as part of your future, as opposed to we're going to try to own it all.
I mean, this is one of the defining things, I think, about our strategy, but also our vision for what the web and really mobile should look like, right? Is we fundamentally are not going to build all these things ourselves. But if you're Google or you're Apple and you're like, okay, we want a music solution in our kind of ecosystem, we want a cloud music solution, or we want music on iPhone, they build those things themselves for the most part.
Or acquire them.
Our strategy, or acquire, but bring it in, right? And our view is mostly, okay, this should be more decentralized, right? Why not empower a really good entrepreneur to go build their own company, give them all the incentive around building a great company. We'll probably get a lot more innovation that way, and make it so that they can integrate social dynamics into their product extremely deeply, design it around people, not make it a traditional music application, for example, and we think it'll blow everything else out of the water.
Interesting. I am curious, as in that model, I think that you're getting to the point with Facebook, and I'm sure you feel it, where some people just don't trust you because they feel you have too much power. That you've pretty much cornered the market on the social graph. It's one ring to rule them all, and you've got the ring. And do you feel that pressure yet? Because I get the sense, I certainly feel it when I have conversations with entrepreneurs. They're like, they have to make a decision. Do I or do I not integrate with Facebook? And do you believe that there really is just one social graph? Or is there room? We have Jeff Weiner here tomorrow from LinkedIn, who believes he's got a very powerful sort of vertical social graph around with LinkedIn. And Twitter believes it has a very powerful sort of interest graph. So there are different sort of social type graphs. But, and as far as I know, you're still not integrated with Ping, right? With Apple?
I don't think yet.
Not yet. I know you guys have been having talks about that, or had talks about that. But do you feel that pressure of power?
Well, I mean, it's interesting. I think you hear the criticism that you're talking about, or the sentiments that you're talking about of like, well, do we want to go all in and build a social app? But at the same time, the apps that have done the best are the ones that have gone all in, right? I mean, one of the things that's defining about the games so far on Facebook is when a lot of these companies that are building games, they go in and develop an app assuming that every single one of their users is going to be socially enabled.
Right.
Now it's through Facebook, but I think Zynga today announced that they're doing something with Yahoo, right? And I think that this kind of will spread out, and that's good. So I just think it's a different modality of thinking, right? If you go in building an app expecting that people are going to be there with their friends and expecting a social experience, then you're building a fundamentally different thing than if that's not the expectation, or if only a few % of your users are doing that. So in some ways, I actually think we're only now entering the zone where a lot of the best entrepreneurs will consider working with us, now that we've achieved the scale, and now a large enough % of their users will be using Facebook. And I mean, this is one of the things that I think is interesting with the instant personalization program that we're doing too.
Right.
Whereas now, if we'd done instant personalization a few years ago, it wouldn't have been that interesting, right? Because,
it was
because a very small,
right?
No.
I mean, it was a sort of, in a way.
Instant personalization is only about sharing information that you've already said that you want to share with everyone.
Right.
But it wouldn't have been compelling a few years ago, right? Because we just didn't have the user base, right? I mean, now if 60 or 70% of any given website's users are likely to be Facebook users, a few years ago that would have been 10%. And it's like no one's going to design an app assuming that 10% of their users are going to be social. That just doesn't mean anything, right? But now you can design something assuming that the vast majority of your users will be socially enabled and just go in with a completely different mindset around how you build something.
That's true.
And I just think that that's going to get even more and more true. And in terms of the thing that you were asking about, are there going to be different graphs? That's definitely our vision. I don't think that there can ever be only one, and that's why we kind of changed some of the language around how we talked about this from the social graph to the open graph, right, at F8 this year. And the idea there was that each of these different services kind of are mapping out their own different parts of the graph. And our view is what we should be doing is trying to facilitate making these more interoperable. And it's not just all about people in social networks either, right? I mean, if you're Yelp, you have a graph of how local restaurants and businesses fit together and the reviews of them and things like that. If you are a music app, you probably have a graph of how musicians map to songs and albums and things like that. And these rich data sets being interoperable, I think, is going to be one of the really defining things that allows a lot of innovation over the next few years.
Tim opened the conference with a call for partnerships and interoperability. You've had this sort of dust up with Google over which we discussed, and you haven't quite come to terms with Apple. Sometimes the reality of P&L seems to get in the way of that vision. Do you feel like that's going to be resolved? Is that a goal of yours?
Well, which part?
Well,
I mean, the people that you won't partner with.
the people, well, it's that it seems from the outside that you've said, no, we don't want to partner with you because that's a key point of control that we want to hold to ourselves.
I think that we would.
In other words, I don't
Probably
want to
partner
build
with
up an
anyone.
Apple social
Yeah.
graph. That's threatening to my business, right?
Oh,
They have
I don't
hundreds
think-
of
I don't
millions
think-
of users with hundreds of millions of credit
I
cards,
don't-
and
I
if
don't
they get
think
their
we look at
social
it that
graph,
way.
then
I don't think we
you
look
don't-
at it that way.
you don't think about it that way.
We do have this thing where, for very large companies, we are building out, like, we build out tens of millions of dollars of infrastructure to support the games that are on Facebook.
right.
So, I mean, we had this thing earlier this year where we kind of sat down with Zynga and a bunch of the lead developers and said, okay, we don't have any formal relationship, but you're each, I mean, you guys are all investing a huge amount in building on top of Facebook and want more stable resources from us. We want to know that we're building out all this infrastructure for you, that's going to be stable, so we should have a relationship. And we formalized that. And I think that that's been pretty healthy so far.
Right.
So that's all that we require is, I mean, for any, any college student or any entrepreneur who's starting something from scratch, come use our tools. We don't require any relationship.
Right.
If you're a very large company and supporting you is going to cost us tens of millions of dollars, then we want to at least have an understanding of how you're going to use what we're doing and that you're not just going to import the data, but also try to contribute back to the ecosystem and make people's Facebook experience better. And I think we're working through that to different extents with the different companies.
Right. I mean, you are working with very much larger companies. As I recall, in May at D, Steve Jobs said that the demands that Facebook made were just crazy and
Only Steve gets to make those kind of demands.
only Steve gets to make those demands. What was your response when you heard that?
It's fine. I mean, look, here's my view. I think we do a lot with Apple. So I mean, these things don't always have to start big, right? I mean, you can start small and build some great stuff. My view, as I said before, is that I think over the next 5 years, almost every major product vertical is going to get rethought to be social. Get on the bus, right? Like, you're either going to be you're either going to have an incumbent who embraces this, like Apple's doing, right? And trying to push into social stuff. Into iTunes, and that'll be good. Or there will be some really creative entrepreneur with great engineers who are building and rethinking the experience from scratch. And I just think it's going to be a really exciting period to see how this plays out, right? I think some of these are going to be incumbents that are very versatile, able to rotate their business and make things more social and designed around people. Some aren't going to be able to make it, and there's an amazing opportunity, I think, for new entrepreneurs to build new applications and rethink a lot of verticals. But I think over the next 5 years, there's going to just be this opportunity, and everyone is going to have to think about this, kind of in the same way that they are about mobile, right? I mean, you can't, like, there's no way that 5 years out or even 3 years out, any major company isn't thinking about how their products interact with phones and in a mobile environment. And I think people will get there, and they just need to, I think, take the steps that make them comfortable to understand how valuable it is and understand how to integrate it. And I don't think a slow approach is necessarily a bad one.
Right. We're going to take a few questions. We certainly don't want to, stop without doing that. So you guys know where the mics are. They're right here.
I want to ask one other question before we people should start coming out. But Facebook is still a relatively young company. One of the things that we see as companies get bigger, it's harder to maintain the culture. How much do you think about that at Facebook? To build the DNA into the culture.
I mean, every day, right?
But concretely, what do you do about it?
Well, so I think when you're building a company, you can pick a few behaviors that you want your company to have that are different from other companies, and that's like the personality of the company. And so I mean, we have these values that we write down, right? And there are 5 of them that we write down. The 2 that I'd focus on right now that I just really try to hammer home every day are move fast and be bold, right, and take risks. And technology companies are interesting because a lot of companies get stronger with scale. Where like Coca-Cola, the bigger it gets, the bigger its distribution network gets, the stronger it is. Technology companies have some scale advantages, but also they just tend to get slower, right? And then they get replaced by smaller companies that are more versatile. So one of the things that I just think about every day is how can we make this company operate as quickly as possible, right? And often that's kind of encouraging people to move quickly, but a lot of it is just about building out really good infrastructure that enables people to move quickly on top of solid abstractions that we built. And that's a really big deal, I think. Right, I mean, because if you think about it, a company with a few hundred engineers putting out the number and quality of the products that we do, I think is pretty, I'm really proud of it. I mean, that's I think, one of the main things that I'm really proud of, right? I mean, looking back over the past few months and, seeing like just all the awesome stuff, and in my opinion at least, that we've launched, right? I mean, Messages yesterday, and then the location platform, and the Places deal, and deals, and single sign-on, and Places just before that, and Groups, and all the photos improvements, and just to name a few. That's pretty good. Right? So and I just think kind of encouraging small teams to move quickly, take big risks. Better to take a risk to do something big and try and fail. You don't need to get everything right, but better to try some.
Is that chance to influence things and make things happen part of why you guys are sucking in talent from other companies? Or what's your, what's your magic? Or besides the fact that you're on the upward curve?
I think that really good people have this way of seeking out what is the most impactful position for them to be in, right? And for a long time we have this ratio that we measure internally, which is the number of users divided by the number of engineers at Facebook. And Facebook, I think, is one of the only companies...
It's a number with a lot of zeros.
Well, it's been more than 1 million, right? More than 1 million users per engineer at the company for a while. And it's interesting, because if you think about the spectrum, right, you can be a tiny startup where you have like all this creativity and all this flexibility, but you don't really have any users yet. So from that perspective, the leverage is fairly low. To the other end, where you're like a Google or a Microsoft, where you basically have all the users, right? You're a mature company in your space. But you also have, 10,000 engineers, or in Microsoft's case, tens of thousands. The leverage there is pretty limited. So if you plotted out the graph, it would basically be something like this, where Facebook would be like right in that golden period right now. And I just think like really talented people have just a knack for being able to find and seek out what the positions are where they're going to have the most leverage. So it's interesting. It's all different kinds of people. If we were just go through the Messages team from yesterday, it's just all different folks, right? The engineering director on it, this guy Boz, was someone he was my TF at Harvard, and he was one of the first people that I recruited to join the company, so he's been here for about 5 years now. The engineering manager joined us. He was a platform developer building a classifieds app on top of Facebook, and he joined us because he wanted to be a part of the company that was actually building the platform. The lead designer on the project joined us as an intern. And we always do these management presentations where interns come and talk to the management team about what they did that summer. And like, I remember I like asked him some questions, and he had just like went off on me and had like all these awesome points about why I was wrong about my criticism of his project and feedback. So I was like, all right, this guy's awesome. We're definitely hiring him when he graduates.
Why did you wait till he graduated then? I didn't really stop you.
Yeah, well, it's a good question. He was actually, I think he was a sophomore at the time. He came back for one more internship before he joined us full time. Yeah. The guy who built the whole iPhone version of Messages joined us through a talent acquisition, right? The Zenby team, this guy, Will, a really talented dude, wrote the whole thing basically by himself. You know, the back end, right, to build this stuff. I'm just like a few guys leading the team doing that. I mean, these are opportunities that you just don't get at a lot of places, right? And no matter what your background is, or you know how you came to us, or what you're trying to think about doing, like it's I don't know. I think it's a really exciting place to be right now.
All right, we should go to the
We
audience.
need to get to questions. Now, before you guys ask your questions, no lectures, okay? No long questions. We have a lot of you, so we want to get them rapid fire.
Mark, I think it's fair to say that you're a celebrity entrepreneur, and I think it's also fair to say that the public perception of you is one of a computationally minded, sort of rational and logical entrepreneur. But maybe you can talk a little bit about what it's like to be young and so far ahead of so many other founders and entrepreneurs and CEOs, and talk about the effect that's had on you as a person, and maybe some of the lessons you've had to learn in your shoes.
I mean, I think, oh man, I've made so many mistakes in running the company so far. I mean, like basically any mistake that you think you can make, I've probably made, or will make, in the next few years.
There's time.
Yeah, but I don't know. I think if anything, the Facebook story is a great example of how if you're building a product that people love, you can make a lot of mistakes. And I think that that's like, and I don't know, I just think that the lesson to other folks from that is focus on building something that people really like and that's very valuable. And, you know, one of our board members always at our board members, at our board meetings used to make this, whenever we'd be analyzing a problem, he would say, you know, there's 100 problems that you have to deal with right now, but only one or two of them probably really matter, right? So just ignore the rest and put all your effort into focusing on the couple of things that really matter. And I just think that for almost any industry or product that you're in, it's just all about building products that people like, right? And like, if you do that, you can do so much other stuff wrong and like learn from that and fix those mistakes over time and like still end up in a reasonable place. And I don't know. So, I mean, I think that, like, we still make mistakes all the time. I mean, take, for example, the conversation we were having earlier about, you know, the contact importer stuff and, you know, contact syncing. Like, do I know that we're in the right place? No. I think we're doing the best that we can right now. And we wake up every day trying to build a great product for people that's responsive to what they've asked us for. So.
Great.
Mark, curious about education. My 15-year-old daughter, Holly Jeffs, studies with Facebook in full gear. She is interacting with her friends while studying. But the first couple of years, I thought this was a total distraction, but her grades are actually pretty good, so it must be working. And it made me think, do you think of education as an opportunity area for Facebook? You know, corporate Facebook pages are fine, but how about, is that an area that you think of building applications and services for?
Sorry, I didn't hear the end of that.
The question is about do you think education is an opportunity in terms of building applications or services on
For making education social.
It's an inherently social activity.
Yeah. You know, I've spent a lot of time over the last year researching education. And, you know, one of the issues and one of the reasons why I ended up choosing to get involved with that outside of Facebook is that one of the issues is you can't actually sign up for Facebook until you're 13. Right, unless you have your parents' permission. But basically, like, it's not very well adopted in under 13, so that kind of cuts out a lot of the time when people are developing. But, yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of the problems in education are technology around efficiently sharing things. And if someone could build a good application that got people engaged, then I think that there's a big opportunity there. I mean, one analogy is kind of enterprise software to consumer software. I think a lot of enterprise software gets developed from this mindset of like, I want a feature checklist, right? Rather than like, what is really good to use, right? And I think that that's one of the reasons why a lot of communication tools are going from, like a lot of communication that we do now, it goes over IM, right? It's not owned by whatever company's IT department you're operating under. It's a consumer product that people are using legitimately to do work. And the reason why they do that is because it's enjoyable to use. And I think the same is going to be true in a lot of like kind of traditionally non-consumer areas, right? Not only enterprise, but I think things like education as well, where traditionally they're just, the software hasn't been like as great to use as kind of the best consumer software. But I think that there's an opportunity now for people to do that and create great socially designed products. And I don't know, I think we'll see it.
So we should keep going here.
Yeah, we got to keep going.
Yeah, we can move in here. Yeah.
Bang, 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 guys.
Havo from the Netherlands. I'm your biggest fan on Facebook. In the last 2 years, I've been advocating to my customers or potential customers that social business, social commerce should be in Facebook, and that any website can be in Facebook. I believe that you guys can do billions of revenues. Do you agree with that?
Can you do billions in revenues and particularly work, as I understand
Commerce and business, normal commerce and business, not just advertisement.
Sorry, the echo is very tough.
Yeah, it's hard to understand through the echo, I'm sorry.
So now your business is about advertisements, right? You're helping social gaming. But normal businesses, if they sell stuff, they can do it through
Commerce.
Facebook.
Commerce, yes.
Commerce, yeah.
So commerce is a big area. Social commerce is one of the hottest areas.
So this is I mean, what I was trying to say in response to you before, but I actually never got back to your question until the end with one sentence. But what social applications have is they're just much more engaging, right? Because you have the choice of either, I mean, going back to like the music example or the games example, right? You could either play a game, or play a game where the dynamics involve playing it with your friends. You could either play music, or you can see what your friends like to listen to through playlists and discover new stuff through that. And I think what you find is that these social apps, when they're executed well, are a lot more engaging, right, and are just more enjoyable for people to use. Now, that creates a lot of opportunities for people to monetize them and build great businesses, right? I mean, whether it's advertising or, commerce, buying things, or subscriptions. I think those are kind of the classical business models, but there might be other things that people come up with as well. I just think that it all starts with building a product that people love, and when you execute a social product well, I think we've shown that you can extend that to many, many verticals, maybe any vertical, and make it so that it becomes a great product that's an order of magnitude more engaging than anything else.
If I'm Andrew Mason at Groupon or Susan Lin at Guild, who's here, should I be worried about Facebook deals combined with location, places? Should I be worried that you're eating my lunch?
No, I mean, I think we want to work with them. Right, and it's a deal platform. Right. It's not, I mean, they're businesses, they're out selling all these deals, and I mean, we don't have a sales force that's focused on selling those deals.
Right.
How much commission will you take?
How much commission will you take? Yeah.
I don't know, you want to just pick a number?
Just
dangerous.
use Ari Emanuel's answer last night, which
What?
is fair is where you end up. Over here.
Hi, Julianne Pepitone with CNN. I reported earlier today on a bug in Facebook that deleted some users' accounts saying that they were in violation of terms of service when in fact they were legitimate accounts. I was wondering if you have any further information on that and whether it's at all related to Facebook's messaging system and if you're concerned about those kinds of bugs for the messaging system going forward.
Yeah. I don't have any new information on that. I apologize to those users for that. My understanding of that was that it was a bug. It was not related to messages. It's unfortunate, but I think we were able to get them all back on the site.
Great. Over here.
Hi, my name is Francois. I am CEO of myerp.com. And so Facebook moved 500 million friends into the cloud. what should trigger 500 million small business to move to the cloud with Facebook?
A little help.
Did you say, oh, you want to...
I need a translator for this side of the room.
He said 500 million people are on the platform. How could you get 500 million businesses on the platform? Is that what you said?
Correct.
Yes. In other words, are you interested in getting businesses on the platform as well as people?
Yeah, and I mean, we have this whole Pages product, right? That's
It's
very
mainly
widely
focused
used.
on pretty big brands, isn't it?
I mean, I think that the biggest brands have the biggest followings, but
Right.
and there's, I don't know, I don't want to give any incorrect stats, but there's a lot of pages that are small businesses or different entities that are pretty small.
Are you interested in the business social graph?
Yeah,
I got to
but
ask
don't know
that
if our
because
businesses friends
Jeff
with
Wiener's
each
coming
other?
tomorrow, and
Oh,
I'm sure he's
business
interested.
social graph, you mean professional connections between people?
Or between businesses. I'm asking because he asked.
I don't know what that means.
Well, businesses do business with each other all the time.
Yeah.
Okay,
I mean,
we'll
in
move
a-
on.
That's, yeah.
Thank you for the question. I failed at translating it.
No, it's cool. I'm just having a hard time hearing on this side of the room.
We have seen key functionality from Facebook move outside of Facebook to a degree. You know, with the API, with the like button available in different pages. Is it going to be Facebook as a destination in your mind, or Facebook as an enabler?
Well, I think the first chapter has definitely been building out Facebook the application, right? The site that people use every day. The long term, if you buy my vision and what I hope plays out over the next 5 years of just having all these different verticals get rethought by brilliant entrepreneurs in these different areas, will be that the vast majority of the social ecosystem will not be Facebook, but we will help those businesses get built, right? Because they're going to be able to focus on doing what they do well, right? And then they can just plug in the social part. And if we do that, then I think we'll be enabling, right? To use your words, and that I think is a bigger long-term opportunity, right? I mean, I don't think that. You know, I mean, actually, I like this map that you have up here, but my first instinct was, your map's wrong. Because, like...
Of course it's wrong, it's version 1.
Because I think that the biggest part of the map has got to be the uncharted territory, right? And, I mean, one of the best things about the technology industry is that it's not zero-sum, right? I mean, this makes it seem like it's zero-sum, right? In order to take territory, you have to be taking territory from someone else. But I think one of the best things is it's like we're building real value in the world, not just taking value from other companies.
Yeah, absolutely,
And,
but there are a lot of companies that are starting to act that way. You're totally right, though. Yeah.
I think our point is, that we see a lot of companies acting as if it is a zero-sum game, and that seems to be framing the debate, and it's refreshing to hear you say that.
So I mean, anyhow, that's our view. I mean, our view is not only that it should expand, but that we should enable it to expand, and that our best strategy and the best thing for the web would be for us to enable the next kind of set of entrepreneurs to go build all those great businesses and discover that, and not even try to do it ourselves, because I don't think we can. I think we do a few things very well, and we're going to keep on trying to do those very well, because even those things are at the beginning.
That's a great argument for why you're going to win. If you stick to that.
I'm getting like the absolute stop it, you're so far over, we have a sponsor reception.
Yeah, I think we're like -25.
Yeah, I didn't, we have a lot of people in the room. I don't know how far, the live stream is probably busting the servers. But there's a woman who's been waiting for so long. Last question, make it quick.
Mobile social, we're right at the beginning. Can you give us some risk-taking things that Facebook can do to move this space forward fast?
The mobile space?
Mobile social.
Well, I mean, just a couple of weeks ago, we announced a few things, right, that we thought were kind of key building blocks for the social platform, right? One was single sign-on, right? Now, it's actually amazing how, signing into an app and creating an account on mobile is so difficult, right? I mean, even using Connect previously was very difficult, because you click Connect, and then you had to enter your Facebook password for each app. And it turns out that remembering your password is actually pretty difficult on mobile, because it's all about muscle memory, not actually remembering the string
and
that
if
you
you're driving, it's really hard.
Yeah, well, that I won't even get to. But so single sign-on now, and this is a good example of non-zero-sum things. We weren't able to do this until recently. You could on Android, you couldn't on iPhone until Apple built fast app switching. And then because they built that, we were now able to create this functionality where any developer can put Connect into their app, and as long as you have the Facebook app, you no longer need to authenticate. All you do is click a button, and you're in. And now that app has access to your public information. It can ask you for other information if it wants. That, I think, is a really foundational building block for good mobile apps. Another is just location information. I mean, we aren't trying to build Places, the app. We're trying to build Places, the location platform that anyone can plug into, both from a read and a write perspective, so that way your apps can all be location enabled, right? And not only do you know who a person's friends are, but you know where they are and who's around you. And that's really powerful. And then the third was the deals thing, which again is also a platform where the goal was not like, okay, we're going to go sell some deals. There should be an economic platform, an engine that anyone can plug into, and we want to enable that on mobile as well. So, I don't know, mobile's, it's a really interesting space now. You know, I think what we've found is, you know, already so many people use Facebook on mobile. It's more than 200 million mobile users. But really, the mobile platform, I think, is just getting started. And some of those type things and things like that going forward, and that kind of collaboration between these different companies is going to enable really good things over the next few years.
Well, please join me in thanking Mark for taking so much of his time and talking about it. Thank you very much.